Back to Good Day Maine, everyone. We are continuing our political profile segment, and joining us this morning is Ralph Carmona. Of course, Ralph, you are running the position of mayor of the city of Portland. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, the reason I'm running is because there's a fragmentation that I see in the governing of the city and also even in our politics, and it's being played out in this campaign, Diana. And now let me back up in terms of how I got into this, because that's going to be the background. I'm born and raised on the east side of Los Angeles. I overcame poverty, domestic violent childhood, and segregation to receive 3 degrees, including the highest degree of academic distinction, a PhD. I went on to work for the largest, at one time, financial institution in the world, working with cities larger and smaller than Portland, likewise the 6th largest publicly owned utility in the country. I also had a parallel life in civil rights at the national, state, and local level. And I've been an adjunct professor in political science for over 20 years, and I've been on the board of the largest public university system in the world. Along the way, I met a woman from Maine, and we got married 7 years ago. She brought me into Portland, and she said, "You know, you've been working with all these different cities. What do you think of my hometown?" Well, I fell in love with it. It's a non-skyscraper San Francisco is the way I described it. And 2 years ago, when I left the utility business, we decided to make Portland our home for life. And I said, there's a rub here. I'm turning 6 years old, I'm still young, and I want to engage in the public interest. So I got involved in issues that you don't get involved in if you're going to run for mayor. But that got the attention of people. That kind of leads to the second. There's the experience of 40 years, which is longer than some of these candidates have been alive. And then there's the achievements. People were amazed at, and if you look at the information I provide on my website, people think I've been here for 13 years.
Well, let me ask you this. In Portland, in the city of Portland, let's ask you, what do you think we're doing well, and what do you think we need to work on? Well,
I think the city as a whole is a fantastic city. It's doing great things. The problem is that it's doing great things in spite of its governance. Right now what you have basically are 7 part-time mayors running the city. And so it leads to situations like the Civic Center where there's a delay in terms of decision-making as to whether to renovate it, whether it should be bigger, whether it should be smaller, whether it should be placed someplace else in the city. That was almost 15 years of wasted time. And of course other candidates have mentioned, you know, the waterfront, the State Pier, another classic example. And so
we'll get into some of those issues coming up in our next segment, but we want to talk a little bit about, you know, you said problems with government, but if there were 3 specific issues that, if elected mayor, that you would work to improve, how would you identify those?
Well, the first clearly is to develop an absolute consensus from the city council, and you've got to work with neighborhood associations, and you've got to work with the city council to achieve that. So I'm going to be focused on that. That's the most important thing, because until you get government in order, you're not going to be able to accomplish the things that are important, which is stopping the bleeding of public services, being able to leverage off the quality of life economic assets we have here, which are the great cuisine, the art, and the tourism that we have. It's the strength of this city. And you're not going to be able to continue to build on the existing strengths, like safety, for instance. The city of Portland is much more of a safe place than the rest of the state.
Well, you brought up some of the more specific issues that we were hoping to talk about. We're glad you did, so stick around. We'll get into those a little bit more in depth coming up here around 8:10 in our next hour.
And I do want to finish about why I got involved, because I think that's very important.
Okay, all right, you got
lots
it, Ralph
more to talk
Carmona.
about.
Thank you very much. You're vying for the position of Portland mayor. We'll chat with you in just a few minutes. Joining us once again is Ralph Carmona. You are vying for the position of mayor of the city of Portland. Thank you so much for sticking around. Now we want to talk about the issues. We talked a little bit about your background. Let's start with the Pier Project. Pier Project still just under the skin, sensitive topic for a lot of voters. We had the Pier Project, $100 million plan to renovate the pier, literally crumbled into the ocean, along with what's happening to the Maine State Pier right now. Where did we go wrong? How do we move past it?
Well, where they went wrong is that they could have done an RFP process through the city manager and gone forward with it, and just been able to see who who responded to that and make a decision. And then the city council could have weighed in on a policy basis. Instead, it was a micromanagement on the part of the city council. And they basically they were playing the role of the city manager in this process. And that's what prolonged it. That's what created the political conflict. That's what created this kind of fragmentation I described earlier.
So we gave the power to the wrong people. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the policymakers became basically played the role of the city manager. If the city manager did what the city council did, he would have been fired.
So if you're elected, what happens next?
Well, if I'm elected, the role I'm going to play is to be able to get the city council behind certain kinds of policies that they support and to drive the staff and to work with the city manager in that regard.
But specifically the waterfront, what would you do?
Specifically on the waterfront is that we're going to do a review of the process, and we're going to discuss it with the city council and get their perspective. Where do they see it going? See, because this is a consensus process, and you have to get a majority of the city council on your side.
All right, and now the second issue, this is a hot button issue for many people. A lot of people say they would reluctantly support renovations at the Cumberland County Civic Center. Some people would argue something needs to be done. We don't love the plan that's before us. Where do you stand on renovations?
I came out very strongly, and I was the first candidate to come out in support of it. And the reasons is basically this. This is a shoulda, woulda, coulda. We could have done a number of things with it 15 years ago. Maybe we should have done a number of things, but we didn't do it. There was a lot of, again, the indecisiveness that reflected this kind of decision-making that's fragmented, oriented. And so as a consequence of that, you have what you have. We're facing the potential of a lawsuit, ADA, the Americans with Disability Act. We have an ugly structure that's there. We'll have a state-of-the-art facility that's reflective of the 21st century. And I think that's important. We've got to do something about it. We can't leave it there as an eyesore for the next couple of years.
And what about dredging the harbor? Looking back, there's been some criticism that should have been done sooner, so we could accommodate larger cruise ships. There wouldn't be the risk of them getting stuck during astronomically low tide. Is that something that you think still needs to be addressed?
Oh, yes. Well, first of all, they've got to fix the mistake, and mistakes are made. My sense is that when you look back, it's a no-brainer. Why didn't they recognize there's going to be low tides during certain parts of the year? They didn't, so you got to fix it.
And when you say they, who do you mean?
Oh, well, the people who are responsible in terms of putting the project together.
And the final question, we'll give you the last 20 seconds or so, Ralph, to give your message to voters. Why should they choose you come Election Day?
Okay, I want the voters to clearly understand and recognize that I did some amazing things, and it got people's attention, and they encouraged me to run as a consequence of that. They saw classic example is my public criticism of this governor on this show, and also meeting with the governor. That's a reflection of experience, and people said, Ralph, you should run because you can make a major difference. The only way to do that is to knock on people's door. And for the viewers, and please check out ralphcarmona.com, because I'm not going to be able to reach everyone.